Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 10th of October, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar index. It's sinking lower this morning, so we're back below the cloud on the short-term chart, but on the cloud chart, but on the point and figure short-term chart, we are still holding support with multiple upside targets. Remembering this is my long-term, my medium-term, and my short-term view of what's going on. So we can see that we're above the cloud on the weekly chart and on the daily chart. That means we're bullish long and medium term. Just short term we've turned a bit bearish, so it's always trends within trends. So we take a look at the euro against the dollar, and we see that the euro is actually rising on that weaker dollar as well. So euro strength this morning. Looking at the yen, we're seeing the dollar actually still holding its bullish position here and about to make a bullish transition on the medium-term chart, so looking better there as well. Sterling is looks still weak against the dollar. We're below the cloud here, so that is still bearish for sterling. And if we look at against the euro, sterling also nudging new lows there. So sterling looking quite bearish this morning, and against the Swiss franc, we're also bearish on all three time frames, as you might expect. Bitcoin rose sharply yesterday, and we're now sitting at $8,600. No clear upside targets. We did have this target that was given back on the 30th of September for 8646. We've kind of got there, but there are no clear upside targets from here. So it's quite a hard situation to read. We're still bearish, medium and short term, but the medium and long term, but the short term chart has of course turned bullish. The US stock market recovered quite sharply last night. It was up nearly 1%, but of course it was down over 1.5% the day before. So we're seeing almost there 3 steps down, 2 steps back. So it's a lot of volatility entering the market. And if we look at the NatGas, we're also just starting to nudge through the cloud there as well. The Dow Jones, we're seeing also just struggling to make short-term bullish. And the Russell 2000, our biggest concern for the market really, this is the breadth of the market, 2,000 stocks in this index, and it's bearish on all three time frames. The futures this morning are down about 1/3% on the S&P future, and the Nasdaq E-mini down 0.4%. That is suggesting that the market will open slightly lower. UK market is down 0.45% this morning, so we're seeing the FTSE bearish still on all three time frames, and the Midcaps in the UK also still bearish on all three time frames, and the CAC 40 also still looking bearish there as well, as we see. The Japanese market was flat overnight, so no real change there. The Hang Seng actually also flat, still bearish on all three time frames, and the Chinese market was actually up 0.8%. Starting to look a little bit better on that medium-term chart. We might just see a transition occurring here, but of course short-term and long-term we're still bearish. The Sensex was down 1%, giving up all the gains it had made the day before, and the Aussie market was flat. Brent crude sitting at $58. Bearish on all three time frames, and WTI also bearish on all three time frames, and the US NatGas price sitting at $2.24, again bearish on all three time frames. The medium term transition there was very short lived. Gold sitting at 1508, so still looking bullish all round, and silver also looking bullish all round. US 10-year yields sitting at 157, so we've seen a little bit of recovery in the yield there, and we are in short-term bullish territory, so yields recovering there. And German bond prices, of course, the yields falling, yields rising, the bonds are falling, and so we're seeing that happening as well. This data all coming from Thomson Reuters Icon. If you're using Metastock, Zenith, the same data source as Reuters, really good for broad coverage of the markets. For the stocks, I'm using Yahoo Finance, a good free source of data here. A lot of our users using that. So here we are sitting looking at world markets. So the US was fairly bullish, Europe bearish, and Asia mixed. Taking a look at the Dow 30 first of all, we saw that strong showing yesterday. Microsoft were the best performer, up nearly 2%. Intel were up 1.5%. Johnson & Johnson were down 2%. The legal case loss hitting them, and that's starting to have a better effect on the share price there. We're seeing here we're 7% lower than the Dow on performance terms this year. The NASDAQ again was pretty strong all round. The best performer was Applied Materials. They were up 3%. American Airlines continued to perform well, up another 3%, but still bearish on the longer term chart. Looking at the downside, we only had a handful of stocks down. Activision Blizzard, they were down 1.2%. The medium-term recovery is still underway though, and if we look at Netflix, they were up, but still looking very worrying on that medium and long-term chart. Taking a look at the Aussie market now, the best performer overnight was Aurora Limited. They were up 14%. Not enough to take this chart bullish though. Brambles Limited, they were up 3.5%. Again, not enough to change that medium-term picture. On the downside, we had Resolute Mining down 11%. They're starting to see a real fall away over the last few weeks, and we're seeing that showing up here on the weekly chart. Looking at the Indian market overnight, we had Bharti Airtel. They were up 4%, starting to look like a recovery there, so that's looking quite good. And then on the downside, we had India Bulls Housing. Here we see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo, and they're still sinking lower, underperforming the Dow Jones by 75% this year. Taking a look now at the European market, we start with the UK market. The best performer here is Antofagasta. They're up 1.8%. Anglo-American also up 1.8%. So we are seeing that trend continuing from Anglo-American, ever as Glencore resource stocks doing quite well this morning in the UK. Centrica are up 1%, but not enough to change the picture here. Have underperformed the Dow Jones by more than 50% this year. Looking at the worst performers this morning, DS Smith down 3.4%. Mondi down 3.1%, and Smurfit Kappa down 2.6%. The 250 this morning, we're seeing here Saga. They're the best performer, up 3%. Not enough to change the picture on the chart though. CYBG up nearly 3%. Again, not enough to change the picture. CAS Minerals, again, we're seeing resource stocks looking pretty good. The worst performed, Dunelm, down 6%. They've been a star in the retail sector of late, but now that's starting to crack for them as well. They've outperformed the Dow Jones by 40% this year, but we are seeing a fall away there too. Looking at the European markets now, we've got LMVH. They're the best performer, up 3.75%. Chart looking good. Long-term chart still looking good. The relative has been rolling over, but we're starting to see a little bit of recovery there. We're seeing Kering, Volkswagen, Daimler, so US car makers, European car makers looking pretty good this morning, although the chart's still pretty choppy. The big story in Europe this morning was Phillips. Profit warning out from Phillips based on the US-China trade wars, and we're seeing that really dropping the price right down there. So we're seeing that's ending the medium-term trend for Phillips. So that's looking quite worrying. That's maybe the beginning of something. Most of all, we're seeing a screen of red in Europe this morning. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you.